The crisp soul air nipped at Jinwoo's cheeks as he jogged, the rhythmic thud of his feet a counterpoint to the city's hum. He glanced over his shoulder. Gina, his younger sister, was trailing behind, her pace deliberately slow. A smirk played on his lips. He knew this little game. "Why are you suddenly shadowing me on my workout?" he asked, his voice laced with playful annoyance. Gina huffed, her breath misting in the cold air. "You've been awfully aloof lately, all nose to the grindstone." Jinwoo slowed to a walk, allowing her to catch up. "It's not good to spend too much time at a desk," he countered, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. The truth, however, was far more complex. He was burdened by a secret, a weight pressing down on him, a secret that had transformed his life. "Don't fall behind," he added, a subtle jab meant to break the tension. They continued their jog in silence for a few moments, the rhythmic pounding of their feet echoing in the quiet morning. Then Gina broke the silence. "Gina," she began, her voice almost a whisper. "Then," she continued, "hypothetically, if you suddenly came into a vast fortune, say, a significant sum," she paused, testing the waters, "what would you do?" Jinwoo raised an eyebrow, surprised by the unexpected question. "Why do you ask?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Well," Gina replied, her eyes darting around, "maybe deposit it or, move into a bigger house." She chuckled, her expression light, but her eyes betrayed a certain nervousness. "And the rest?" she asked. "What about the leftovers?" Jinwoo pondered the question, a flicker of unease dancing within him. The sheer scale of such wealth was almost incomprehensible. "I haven't really thought about it," he admitted, honesty coloring his response. The thought of 3 billion won, a sum that could change their lives completely, filled him with a strange mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "Aren't the numbers too unrealistic?" Gina asked, a hint of skepticism in her voice. "Why 3 billion?" Jinwoo stopped, the question forcing him to confront the reality of his situation. "It's not that unrealistic," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. He knew the source of this unexpected windfall, the price of a deal he'd struck, a deal that would shape his destiny. A car pulled up beside them, abruptly interrupting their conversation. The window rolled down, revealing his brother. "Hey, brother," his brother called out, his voice filled with a certain urgency. "Wait for me. What the heck are you doing?" Jinwoo exchanged glances with Gina, a shared look of intrigue and concern passing between them. His brother, ever the impulsive one, was rarely this flustered. "A hunter is a hunter, though," his brother continued, his voice regaining its composure. 3 billion. It's for the building we're constructing. We plan on using it as the guild office. The estimated price is 3 billion, but it'll rise. One building for completing 19 C rank raids." He trailed off, his eyes narrowed in thought. "So you're saying it's just a small investment, as long as you can become a guild master?" Jinwoo nodded slowly, the implications sinking in. His brother's words painted a picture of ambition, of a gamble on his unprecedented potential. "That is correct, sir," his brother confirmed, his tone respectful. "What should I do?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken expectations. 3 billion won. It was a sum that would make most people jump at the opportunity. But for Jinwoo, it was more than just money. It was a challenge, a testament to the path he'd chosen. "Normally, there would be no reason to refuse," Jinwoo said, his voice thoughtful, "but I am aware of it. I'm a special case, even among the awakened. Since nobody has heard of a hunter that can level up and grow stronger at this rate." He paused, considering his words carefully. "If I continue to level up like this, it's possible that I could reach S rank. No, maybe something even stronger than that. If that happens, 3 billion is nothing. But I have a condition." His brother's face lit up, eager to hear what Jinwoo had to say. "You can tell me anything, sir," he replied, his voice brimming with anticipation. "You and me," Jinwoo stated, his voice unwavering. "No one else. We go in alone, sir." His brother's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "If I'm not misunderstanding, we have to clear these C-rank dungeons by ourselves?" he asked, a questioning tone in his voice. Jinwoo nodded, the weight of his decision settling upon him. "You understood perfectly. But to enter a C-rank gate, there must be at least 10 members. If we offer a reward just for filling the headcount, there will definitely be people lining up. We're using the method Huangdong's accused of using, his brother added, his voice tinged with apprehension. "But isn't it too dangerous, sir?" Jinwoo understood the risk, the potential consequences. "You can't connect 2 and 2, he explained, his voice calm yet firm. "If we're fine, Nobody else will get hurt. Think about it. Say we successfully completed 19 raids. After creating an attack force, we become an attack force that came out safely 19 times. Won't that be helpful in showing your skill to your father? His brother considered Jin-Woo's words, the implications slowly dawning on him. The strategic brilliance of it, the risk, the potential reward. It was a high-stakes gamble, but one with potentially enormous payoffs. 10, his brother said finally, a decisive nod confirming his agreement. I get it. Let's do it that way. So I will recruit our teammates. The conversation shifted, the weight of the earlier discussion momentarily forgotten. The mundane routine of daily life returned, the humdrum tasks, the relentless grind of training. Alarm, daily quest, preparing to become strong, has been completed, a robotic voice announced from Jin-Woo's smart device. Jin-Woo sighed. Oops, I accidentally overdid it. I was lost in thought. He had pushed himself far beyond his usual limits. Push-ups, 100, curl-ups, 100, squats, 100, running, 1.1 kilometers. The voice continued reporting his increasingly intense training regimen. What happened to Jenna? His brother asked, noticing Jin-Woo's exhaustion. Does it matter? Jin-Woo retorted, his voice gruff. He was fixated on the goal, on the looming challenge ahead. He continued his rigorous workout, his body screaming in protest. The daily quest notification appeared again. The training regimen repeated. Only this time, the numbers were doubled. Push-ups, 200, curl-ups, 200, squats, 200, running, 2.2 kilometers, the voice announced. It was relentless. It's not going above 200, Jin-Woo muttered, noticing a strange cap on his workout's effectiveness. A code appeared on his device, \U64\UC600. He puzzled over it, wondering if it applied to his running as well. 200 kilometers was an impossible feat. Let's start with 20 kilometers, he decided, his determination unwavering, despite the physical strain. A new message arrived. It was a fax from his brother. Brother, Washington, USA. Fax me the information of the 2 survivors. The number is Mr. Huang. Jin-Woo's phone buzzed again. This time, it was an international call. What are you doing at this hour? The voice inquired, a familiar tone laced with concern. It was Lola, his contact in the States. Lola, can I ask you something? He began. What happens if I incapacitate someone in Korea? Lola's gasp was audible through the phone. Samsung, are you serious? Korea hasn't yet concluded the Indian Treaty of Criminal Hunters. Since you're a hunter from America, you'll receive a trial in America, and there probably won't be much hassle with the government due to the negotiations. A dark cloud passed over Jin-Woo. Thank goodness, he muttered, the relief palpable. Some individuals harmed my brother. If I don't at least find them, I won't be satisfied. His brother's message cut through the relief. S-rank Hunter Huang Dong-Soo, Scavenger Guild. Brother, 7 squad members all incapacitated. The other 2 came out alive. The survivors' ranks were D and E. Bro, isn't that type of person to put his life on the line for weak teammates? Also, they were fillers, not normal team members. They must have set a trap and incapacitated him. That's why I told you that you can't do anything without me. The gravity of the situation hit Jin-Woo hard. I'll have to visit Korea for a while, he stated grimly. Can you empty my schedule? Lola's voice registered the urgency in his tone. But Mr. Huang, if you leave so suddenly, the guild will become paralyzed. When can you free some time? Around 2 weeks from now? Jin-Woo asked, his voice taut with urgency. The flickering screen displayed the digitized inferno of Hell's Gate. A colossal, 3-headed hound, Cerberus, stood sentinel, its fur the color of burning coals. Across the digital landscape, the words, Hell's Gatekeeper Cerberus, materialized. I'll become much stronger, a voice, resolute and steely, echoed. The viewpoint shifted, revealing a young man, Sung Jin-Woo, his face grim, his eyes locked onto the monstrous gatekeeper. I can't afford to falter here. He understood the risks, the immense power radiating from the gate, but retreat wasn't an option. Fear won't make me stronger. Cerberus, I will overcome you. The system interface flickered, displaying a cascade of information. An S-rank key, access to the demon castle. Jin-Woo knew the implications. S-rank dungeons were notorious death traps, desolate wastelands where even seasoned hunter teams vanished without a trace. Juju Island, once vibrant, now stood as a grim testament to the destructive power of an S-rank gate. He wasn't ready for this level of danger. He needed to grow stronger, to level up, to hone his skills in less perilous instant dungeons. He understood the mechanics of the system. The higher his level, the less likely he was to encounter these catastrophic S-rank gates. A blessing and a curse. The best choice is to prepare, he muttered, reviewing his current abilities. He activated Sprint, a burst of speed enhancing his agility. Then, he unleashed Bloodlust, an attempt to weaken the Cerberus. The system notification flashed. The enemy's resistance was too high. The effect was cancelled. A wave of frustration washed over him. Even with the Wolf Slayer title boosting his stats against beast-type monsters, his attacks barely scratched the gatekeeper. The sheer difference in power was staggering. The system blared another warning. Cerberus is using skill, Wrath. The three-headed hound pulsed with an infernal energy, its size doubling, its power amplified. Jin-Woo felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a test. A test of his resolve, his adaptability, his will to overcome impossible odds. He dodged Cerberus's first strike, the ground trembling from the force of the impact. He was outmatched, outgunned, but he refused to yield. The battle raged. System notifications flooded his vision, tracking his dwindling health, activating his perseverance skill, a last-ditch effort to mitigate the incoming damage. Each attack from Cerberus sent shockwaves through his body, each dodge a desperate gamble. He was pushed to the brink, his health plummeting, but something within him snapped. He recalled the words of the system, the strange reawakening, the burden of becoming someone's avatar. He had to exceed expectations, to defy the limits imposed upon him. A primal scream ripped through his throat, a declaration of defiance against the system, against the impossible odds. "Devour the system," he roared, unleashing a torrent of attacks, fueled by a desperate, almost reckless abandon. He fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his movements becoming more fluid, more instinctive. He learned, he adapted, he evolved. Mid-battle, the tide began to turn. His attacks, once ineffectual, now landed with greater force, chipping away at Cerberus's seemingly impenetrable defenses. The digital landscape trembled as the two forces clashed, a whirlwind of energy and raw power. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Cerberus stumbled, its infernal glow dimming. Jin-Woo pressed his advantage, unleashing a final, devastating blow. The monstrous hound dissolved into pixels, its roar fading into silence. The system notifications returned, this time bearing tidings of victory. "You have slain Hell's gatekeeper Cerberus." A cascade of level-up notifications followed, a testament to his hard-fought victory. He stood amidst the digital ruins, his body battered, his spirit unbroken. He had stared into the abyss and emerged victorious. He knew he wasn't ready to face the demon castle yet, but he was no longer the same hunter who had entered the gate. He had proven to himself that he could overcome any obstacle, any challenge. He would return, stronger, more determined than ever. As he collected his rewards, the warden's necklace, the castle door key, and a Cerberus fong, a new message appeared, a communication from the outside world. A businessman, offering a substantial sum for a delicate task. Jin-Woo listened patiently, the businessman's pleas growing increasingly desperate. He spoke of rivals, of insects that needed to be dealt with, of other hunters complicit in their schemes. He offered more money, a staggering amount, to ensure their silence. Jin-Woo considered the offer. He had witnessed the darkness within the dungeons, the ruthlessness of the system, the lengths people would go to for power. He understood the businessman's desperation, his desire for retribution. "It's no problem for me to deal with these insects," Jin-Woo replied, his voice devoid of emotion. He had a score to settle with the system, and perhaps with those who abused its power. He was no longer just a hunter. He was a force to be reckoned with. The businessman, relieved, continued to explain his reasons for contacting Jin-Woo directly. He revealed his position within the Hunters Guild, his unconventional methods, his preference for eliminating threats permanently. His final words sent a chill down Jin-Woo's spine. "For me," the businessman confessed, "it's much more fun to handle people than monsters." Jin-Woo ended the communication, a grim understanding settling upon him. The world outside the dungeons was just as dangerous, just as ruthless. He was stepping into a new arena, a new game, where the lines between hunter and hunted were blurred. He was ready. The air in the training hall crackled with tension, not from the clash of steel, but from the unspoken words hanging between master and student. The rhythmic clang of their practiced swords echoed through the spacious room, each parry and thrust a testament to years of honed skill. Ha ha ha, master. You're as skilled as always. The student, a young man with a respectful but playful grin, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. The master, his face etched with the wisdom of age, chuckled. What are you saying? This old body will become useless if I don't train it properly. It's obvious you were going easy on me, the student retorted, his eyes twinkling. Were you putting less strength in your thumb out of consideration for me? The master's smile faded slightly. That wasn't even a handicap. If you still had both of your arms. Stop. You're still talking about that, even after it's been a few months, the student interrupted, his voice laced with a hint of pain. The phantom ache of his missing limb still lingered, a constant reminder of a past he struggled to reconcile with. Suddenly, a shrill ring pierced the air. An emergency call. The master sighed. Low-rank hunters keep getting these kind of annoying calls. We'll have to stop here for today, master, the student said, sheathing his sword. Are you really planning on postponing your retirement? The master looked out the window, his gaze distant. Retirement? Even if I live, how long will I last with my remaining life? I want to stay useful to this world. The student raised an eyebrow. But this is really surprising. An S-rank hunter being taught the way of the sword by a low rank like me. Because even with a high rank, I can't make up for a lack of skill, the master replied, his voice firm. Later, as the student prepared for a D-rank dungeon raid, his thoughts drifted back to his awakening as a magic hunter. Why did a swordsman like me get awakened as a magic hunter? The sword skills I've learned over the past decades. I have no use for them in a dungeon. There must be a reason for this, huh? A familiar voice interrupted his musings. Excuse me, you perhaps, are you Mr. Sun? Mr. Sun Kale? The student turned to see a man he vaguely recognized. I didn't recognize you at all. I can't find a trace of your old self. You changed so much within a few months. What happened to you? The man's words tumbled out in a rush of surprise and concern. Ah, I shouldn't have said that, he quickly added, realizing his blunder. But how did? When I came to my senses, it was fine. Even I'm not sure what really happened. Great spellcaster Candiare's blessing, temporary effect, will to rehabilitate. Any dismembered body parts are restored, the student murmured, piecing together fragmented memories. What could have really happened? The man asked, his voice filled with worry. It's not good if a young man like you becomes disabled. He let out a breath of relief. What a relief, such a relief. Don't worry about this, the student reassured him. I'm lucky to have kept my life, even with the few skills I have. Even though I heard rumors that you were safe, I can't believe it, even after seeing you with my own eyes, the man exclaimed. Are you also going because of the guild's orders? That's right, the student replied. As they approached the dungeon entrance, a gruff voice barked, You as well. No entry. No entry. No entry. They are already here. The student's heart sank. Ha, what a day this is. The members of that day are all here. Jin-Woo, Ju-hai, and Mr. Kim Sang-chiak. His mind flashed back to that fateful day in the dungeon. The terror, the confusion, the desperate scramble for survival. He remembered running, leaving his comrades behind, including Mr. Sunday. He knew they wouldn't be happy to see him. He'd even pointed a sword at one of them, intending to use him as a sacrifice. Shame washed over him. Even though he'd eventually stayed, he didn't have the right to judge them for their actions. I see. I didn't think this through, he muttered. Suddenly, a voice called out, Ku Mayan. We all returned alive. Jin-Woo? Are you really Jin-Woo? You changed so much, I almost can't recognize you. Another voice exclaimed. I'm a bit late. What why? I looked for you as hard as I could. Why now? Why did you grow so much? The words were laced with a mixture of relief, confusion, and a hint of resentment. Your leg should be in a bad condition, huh? Someone asked. Your leg, what happened to it? An unwelcome voice cut through the tense reunion. What a romantic atmosphere. Is somebody filming a drama here? Or do hunters date each other these days? Another voice, harsher this time, silenced the jeering. Shut up, you fools. This isn't a picnic. The student felt a surge of apprehension. Take care of us today. What is this? Sorry for being late, a calm voice said. You two are the summoned hunters, Sung Jin-Woo and Sung Kyung? We'll go through the procedure first. Wait. What's going on here? Oh, those people. They are rehabilitators. That will join the raid with you hunters. Rehabilitators? Outrage flared among the hunters. Are you telling us to go raiding with criminals? Even if they are criminals, they were hunters in the past. And it's not rare for hunters who committed crimes to serve time in dungeons to reduce their sentence, the official explained. Oh my, please understand that hunters in this area have diminished significantly, so we have to resort to such measures. Also, the monitoring department's hunter, Gang Tae-shik, will participate in this raid, so don't worry. The students' unease intensified. The rehabilitators were all C rank, and while Gang Tae-shik was B rank, it still felt wrong. He exchanged a worried look with Ju-hai. Something feels off. He considered voicing his concerns, suggesting they abandon the raid, but the words caught in his throat. He knew they needed the work, and he wasn't sure he could convince the others. As they finally entered the dungeon, a sense of foreboding settled over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this raid would be different, more dangerous than any they had faced before. He gripped his sword tighter, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Jin-Woo, his friend, his comrade, and silently prayed they would all make it out alive. The stale air hung heavy in the dungeon, thick with the earthy scent of damp stone and the faint, metallic tang of something indefinable. Tilda shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on the imposing figure of Gang Tae-shik, the monitor from the Hunters Association. His words echoed in the confined space, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. They were hunters, tasked with clearing this low-rank gate, yet the atmosphere crackled with an undercurrent of tension that belied the supposed simplicity of their mission. Tae-shik's announcement that he would personally oversee their operation had been met with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The disastrous incident that had claimed the lives of 11 hunters still cast a long shadow over them. 6 had survived, pulled from the jaws of whatever lurked within that gate by the man now standing before them, Sung Jin-Woo. His quiet acceptance of the leadership role offered a stark contrast to the bravado of some of the other hunters. A subtle bow, a murmured exchange of gratitude and responsibility, a silent acknowledgement of the past. These small gestures spoke volumes of the weight Jin-Woo carried. The others, however, seemed less burdened by the past. Their impatience grated on Tilda's nerves. Their dismissive comments about the goblins, their eagerness to prove their strength, their casual disregard for the inherent dangers of the dungeon. It all felt reckless, almost disrespectful. Jin-Woo, however, remained an enigma. His quiet confidence, his almost effortless dispatching of the initial goblins, his strange new proficiency with a dagger. It all hinted at a transformation, a hidden strength that both intrigued and unsettled her. The path split into 3, a common occurrence in these low-rank gates. The decision to divide their forces, while strategically sound, amplified the underlying unease. As Tilda and another hunter, Song Chi-yeol, ventured down the left path, a gnawing sense of foreboding clung to her. Jin-Woo's earlier encounter with Tae-shik replayed in her mind. The monitor's strange words about children in the dungeon, his chilling question about their willingness to eliminate threats, regardless of form. It all painted a disturbing picture. Meanwhile, Tae-shik led his group down the rightmost path, his demeanor a chilling blend of calm authority and something darker, something that made Tilda's skin crawl. He spoke of goblins as insects, his tone devoid of emotion, as if they were discussing pests rather than living creatures. The casual cruelty in his words sent a shiver down her spine. His subsequent interrogation of the 2 hunters under his watch, their eager assurances of their willingness to do what was necessary, further cemented Tilda's growing unease. Something was terribly wrong. As Tilda and Song Chi-yeol progressed deeper into the dungeon, the silence became oppressive. The air grew thicker, the darkness more profound. They encountered a few scattered goblins, easily dispatched, but the expected sense of accomplishment eluded them. Instead, a pervasive sense of dread filled the void. Song Chi-yeol, usually boisterous and confident, grew increasingly agitated, his attempts at light-hearted banter falling flat. Maybe the others already finished up and left, he muttered, trying to mask his nervousness with a forced chuckle. Tilda didn't respond. Her senses were on high alert, straining to pick up any sign of danger. A faint, almost imperceptible sound reached her ears, a soft, rhythmic padding, like bare feet on stone. It was coming from deeper within the dungeon, growing steadily louder. She gripped her staff tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, a guttural growl ripped through the silence. It wasn't the familiar rasp of a goblin. This sound was deeper, more primal, laced with a chilling hunger. Tilda exchanged a terrified look with Sung Jin-Woo. The padding sound intensified, accompanied now by a chorus of high-pitched squeals and chittering. The darkness ahead seemed to writhe and pulsate. Then, they saw them. Emerging from the shadows, a horde of grotesque figures shambled towards them. They were small, barely reaching Tilda's waist, their bodies emaciated and contorted. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural luminescence, their mouths stretched into grotesque grins, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. They were children, twisted and corrupted by the dungeon's malevolent energy, their innocence replaced by a ravenous hunger. Tilda felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Taishik's words echoed in her mind. Can you eliminate threats, regardless of form? The image of the two hunters under his command, their eager affirmations, flashed before her eyes. She looked at Sung Jin-Woo, his face pale with terror. He raised his sword, his hand trembling. The first wave of the monstrous children crashed into them, their tiny claws tearing at their armor, their sharp teeth snapping at exposed flesh. Tilda fought back, her staff whirling, each blow landing with a sickening thud. But there were too many of them, a writhing mass of corrupted innocence. She could feel herself being overwhelmed, dragged down by the sheer weight of their numbers. The chilling realization dawned on her that this wasn't just a dungeon raid. It was a test, a twisted experiment designed to push them to their limits, to force them to confront the darkest aspects of their nature. And somewhere in the depths of this horrific labyrinth, Gang Taishik was watching, observing their every move, measuring their capacity for elimination. The air hung thick with the coppery tang of something metallic. Not blood, not here, not now. But the scent lingered, a phantom sensation clinging to the back of the throat. Two figures, Ko and Taishik, emerged from the gloom of a branching corridor, their faces etched with a grim determination. Pretty fast, huh? Ko's voice, smooth as polished obsidian, cut through the silence. Taishik's response was a low growl. What are you doing? You blocked my ambush. His eyes, narrowed slits in the dim light, assessed Ko with a mixture of frustration and wariness. Ko chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. My senses are sharp. He paused, a predatory glint in his eyes. My orders were to avoid conflict, but it seemed our biangular friend was becoming a liability. He gestured vaguely towards the corridor they just exited. I attempted a removal. It seems, however, plans must change. A palpable tension filled the air, thick and suffocating. Ko's gaze, once detached, now burned with a sudden, chilling intensity. I'm going to neutralize you both, just like the others. Wait, Taishik stammered, a flicker of fear creeping into his voice. Why? You're a guild member. Ko's expression remained unchanged, a mask of cold indifference. From a nearby device, a tinny voice chirped, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere. Dear? Yes, your hunter job, but can't you quit? It's too dangerous. A sigh, heavy with weariness, followed. What else can we do? In this era of national depression, haven't you considered those waiting for someone who might never return? Still better than meager earnings at some construction site, the voice replied, a thread of defiance woven through the worry. The Hunters Guild won't send low-rankers like us into high-level dungeons. Consider, our first child starts middle school next year. The second, preschool. Sorry to bring it up again, the voice softened. Don't worry, Tilda, the reply came, gentle and reassuring. I know. Stay strong, just a little while longer, okay? All right. Love you, Dad. The connection clicked off, leaving a hollow silence in its wake. Ko's eyes flickered towards the device, a fleeting expression crossing his face before hardening once again. Why are you a hunter? He asked, his voice laced with a chilling mockery. Taishik hesitated, then a faint smile touched his lips. Huh. Our second child is asking all sorts of questions now. The other kids are fascinated their dad's a hunter. He paused, a touch of pride coloring his voice. Dad, does that mean you're stronger than the other dads? A wistful smile played on Taishik's lips. Of course. Daddy can even handle monsters. A childish voice, full of wonder, echoed from the device. Wow, Daddy's as powerful as I thought. Taishik's smile widened. Yeah, Daddy's strong. His expression sobered. Only 1 in 1,000 are awakened, and only 1 in 5,000 awakened are D rank or higher. Many lives rest on our shoulders. He looked at Ko, his gaze firm. 1 in 5,000. Even though I'm a hunter, I'm also a husband and a father. I can't fail today. Not tomorrow. I can't. I won't. A sudden flurry of movement. A gasp. Taishik slumped to the ground, clutching his side. Mr. Kim Sanchik, a voice cried out. Another figure, a healer named Heal, rushed forward. Heal him. Hurry. It's no use, Taishik whispered, his voice weak. You can't save me. No. Heal protested, his voice thick with desperation. You have to live. You said you had to live for your family? His words were punctuated by frantic bursts of healing energy. Taishik looked up at Ko, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resentment. You have to live so that I can despise you. A shadow of remorse flickered across Ko's face. I'm sorry, he murmured. I truly am. I didn't want to apologize like this. I wanted to apologize properly. He straightened, his voice regaining its chilling composure. But if I lowered my head now, I'd be vulnerable. Mr. Sung, I'm sorry, Taishik whispered, his voice fading. So sorry. A heavy silence descended upon the scene, broken only by Heel's choked sobs. Ko stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the still form of Taishik. Another figure, Sung, stepped forward, his voice trembling with rage. Why? Why did you do that to Mr. Kim Sanchik? Ko shrugged, his expression unreadable. Who knows? Could have been monsters. A gate opened, overwhelmed the hunters. A natural catastrophe. He paused, a twisted smile forming on his lips. I just thought of a narrative. It was going to be a goblin incident, but I suppose I'll adjust it. The detainees attempted an escape, after subduing everyone. They attacked me while I was engaged with the boss. Too much for them to overcome a B-rank hunter, like myself, and thus, I was the sole survivor of the raid. He looked at Sung, his eyes cold and calculating. How about it? Believable, wouldn't you say? You monster. Sung spat, his fists clenching. You're no match for me. I'll manage, Ko replied, his voice laced with arrogance. I'm a B-ranker. A C-rank like you couldn't possibly touch me, especially considering my specialty. Sung's eyes hardened with resolve. He turned to Heel, who was still cradling Taishik's body. Mr. Kim, I'm borrowing this. He picked up Taishik's sword, the metal cool and heavy in his hand. He looked at Heel, his voice low and urgent. Heel, can you enhance my strength? Yes, Heel replied, his voice choked with grief, but firm with determination. He channeled his power, a warm glow enveloping Sung. Mr. Sung, with a sword? Heel murmured, his voice laced with a newfound steel. Let's close the distance, so he can't evade. Ko raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. What's a mage like you doing with brute force? Rather ineffective, wouldn't you say? Heel's voice was steady, despite the tears streaming down his face. Perhaps. But for now, let's do this. I'm a swordsman. The air crackled with a sudden, unexpected power. The fight was far from over. 34.7s.